The scent of turpentine and linseed oil permeated the thin air of the studio, a perfume that Victoria Vicky Lee considered the purest fragrance in the world. It was a smell that transported her back to childhood, to the days when she watched her grandmother, a renowned painter, with the same reverence a devotee holds for an altar. In that sacred space, the promise was forged. "Art is the only lover that will never abandon you," her grandmother said, and 12-year-old Vicky embraced the phrase as dogma. Years later, that promise became the backbone of her life, the reason she dedicated every fiber of her being to restoring ancient works, healing the wounds of time with patient brushstrokes. The canvas on her easel at that moment, a stunning landscape painted by her grandmother, was the ultimate symbol of that commitment, a map to her solitary happiness. Vicky's life was a delicately woven tapestry, every thread in its proper place. The promise was the rigid, unbreakable border that held everything together. She had found a perfect balance between her passion and her personal life, an equilibrium personified by Ryan Thompson. Ryan, an idealistic architect, was like a solid foundation for her life, a gentle and patient man who understood the depth of her dedication. He didn't pressure her, didn't demand anything, and waited with an almost unwavering serenity for her to be ready to take the next step. In his pocket, an engagement ring waited for the right moment, a symbol of the future he was patiently building for them. Their relationship was Vicky's safe harbor, an oasis of calm in a world that, to her, was becoming increasingly noisy. The outside world, however, had other plans. Vicky's calm life was about to collide with the storm embodied by Caleb Williams. Heir to a real estate empire, Caleb was the antithesis of everything she represented. While she dedicated herself to restoring the past, he lived to demolish the old and build the new. His most recent project, which she knew about through Ryan, was the demolition of an old historical building to erect a cold, modern skyscraper. This building wasn't just a building. It was the place where Vicky's grandmother had held her first exhibition, a bastion of memory that Caleb was about to destroy. Vicky's aversion to him was intense and personal. She saw him not just as a rival, but as a predator, a soulless man who didn't value beauty or history. The conflict between them was a duel between the sensitivity of the past and the pragmatism of the future, and she was determined to fight to the end. The first dramatic turning point in Vicky's life came subtly, in a gynecologist's office that smelled of antiseptic and felt indifferent. It was a routine appointment, one of those obligations she squeezed in between long hours at the studio. The clinic, with its white minimalist walls, was the opposite of her refuge, and the wait in the reception room, filled with gossip magazines, was a torment. When the doctor finally called her name, Vicky felt a strange premonition. She never imagined herself in a situation like this, pregnant with a child she didn't want. Love wasn't for her, and her grandmother's promise was her only rule. The pregnancy, which should have been a moment of celebration, was the materialization of a mistake, a stain on her meticulously planned life. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with an expression Vicky couldn't decipher, made her sit down. "Victoria," she began, her voice low, "I have some news for you. You're pregnant." Vicky felt the floor disappear beneath her feet, her heart beating wildly in her chest. "That's impossible," she murmured, her voice trembling, her mind trying to find an explanation. The doctor, with a look of pity, continued, "The clinic made a serious error. There was a mix-up of samples during an artificial insemination procedure." The shock turned to terror when she heard the donor's name. The sperm was from a man named Caleb Williams, the doctor said. the words sounding like a gunshot. Vicky felt her world crumble. Destiny, so cruel, had united what she most wanted to keep separate, and her grandmother's promise, meant to be a beacon, became a prison. Vicky left the clinic in a daze, the news of the pregnancy leaving her in a state of shock. She locked herself in her studio, the smell of paint becoming suffocating. Her grandmother's canvas, which had once comforted her, seemed to mock her. The promise, whispering in her ear. Ryan, worried and confused, tried to get close, but with each attempt, Vicky pushed him away. She saw him as a pillar about to collapse and didn't want to drag him down with her. Her pregnancy, which should have been a moment of joy and celebration, was the materialization of a mistake, a stain on her meticulously planned life. The worst part was the certainty that the child would look just like Caleb, the man she despised most. She felt hatred mixing with panic, pain with frustration. The bomb exploded when Caleb sought her out, his concerned expression forced, his suit impeccable, his posture arrogant. He didn't want a family. He wanted to solve a problem. "How much do you want?" he asked, direct, without preamble, as if he were buying a piece of art. The offer, which he thought was generous, was a slap in Vicky's face. "It's not about money," she replied, her voice trembling with anger, her gaze glaring at the man in front of her. "It's about a life, a promise, and a legacy." The word legacy made him freeze for an instant, a flash of memory passing in his eyes, but he quickly hid it. He didn't see her as a woman, but as a piece on a chessboard, an unexpected variable that needed to be controlled. The humiliation she felt was palpable. Her pregnancy, already a burden, became a scandal, a business deal. Ryan, who witnessed the scene, tried to intervene, but Caleb ignored him, treating him as a mere detail, an inconvenience. Caleb's reaction, cold and pragmatic, hurt Vicky more than any words. She felt reduced to an object, a damaged piece of art that needed to be fixed. The scene was a clash of worlds, Vicky's sensitivity colliding with Caleb's pragmatism. He, in his luxurious, cold penthouse, surrounded by technology and minimalism, seemed like the king of a soulless empire. She, in her studio, surrounded by old canvases and memories, was the guardian of a world he wanted to demolish. The pain of rejection, coming from the man she hated. Most was the worst of all. The pregnancy was not just a medical error, it was a test, proof that life cannot be planned. The only certainty was that she would not allow Caleb to turn her into a business deal. The child would be hers, and she would protect it at all costs. The forced cohabitation began, and chaos settled into Vicky's life. Caleb, to her surprise, started showing up at the studio, not to apologize, but to monitor the situation. His presence was like a storm on a sunny day. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the paint, the sound of his heavy footsteps broke the studio's silence. He brought medical reports, birth plans, and in an act of cruel irony, a blank check. "For the baby," he said, his voice emotionless, as if he were closing a deal. Vicky tore up the check, which caused a fury in Caleb. He didn't understand that she didn't need money, but respect. With each visit, the tension between them increased, but little by little, a new element began to settle in. Curiosity. He watched her restoring her grandmother's painting, his eyes fixed on the delicacy of her movements, and for the first time, he saw in her more than just a problem. He saw a woman, an artist. Ryan, in turn, felt increasingly excluded. He was the boyfriend, Vicky's safe harbor, but he felt like a spectator in his own love story. With each of Caleb's visits, his fear and insecurity grew. He saw the connection they had, a tension that was almost palpable, and he felt powerless. The ring in his pocket, which had once been a symbol of hope, became a weight. He tried to fight, but how do you fight against fate? He was the love Vicky chose, but Caleb was the destiny she couldn't avoid. The situation was an impossible love triangle, an unequal battle. Ryan's love was a serene river, but Vicky's destiny was the sea, and the sea was becoming Caleb. The city's weather reflected Vicky's state of mind. A thin, persistent rain fell, washing the streets, but not cleansing the soul. The grey of the sky seemed to be the color of her future. Caleb continued to show up, but in a different way. He didn't talk about money, but about the baby. He took her to appointments, forced her to eat, to rest. It was a strange kind of care, a mix of obligation and curiosity. He watched her with the same attention a predator watches its prey, but with a different glint in his eyes. Slowly, the walls Vicky had built around herself began to crack. Her aversion to him mixed with a strange attraction, a dangerous spark she didn't want to admit. The first ultrasound was the turning point. The small black and white screen revealed a tiny dot, a beating heart. Vicky looked at the image, her eyes filled with tears. Caleb, by her side, didn't say a word, but his eyes, once empty, filled with an emotion she had never seen in him. The cynicism was gone, the arrogance had melted away. For an instant, they were no longer enemies, but parents. In that moment, the baby became the bridge between them, the only thing that united them, and Vicky's promise seemed like a distant memory. The echo of the baby's heart was louder than any promise. She realized that love was not a serene river or a turbulent sea, but a beating heart, a new life, a legacy she hadn't expected, but which was her only salvation. The studio became a silent battleground, with the weapons being glances, sighs, and loaded silences. With each passing day, Caleb's presence became less invasive and more familiar. He stopped offering money and started offering help. He would straighten the easels, bring snacks, and, in a gesture that surprised her, began to observe her grandmother's canvas with genuine interest. She was a landscape painter, wasn't she? He asked one day, his voice low, almost shy. Vicky, surprised by the question, replied that she was. The dialogue, once non-existent, began to flow, not about business, but about art, history, and the beauty of the city he wanted to demolish. The forced cohabitation united them in a strange way, the pregnancy serving as a magnet that attracted them, but kept them at a safe distance. It was a dangerous game of approaching and retreating, and Vicky found herself caught in a web of emotions she didn't know how to decipher. Her hatred for him, which had once been a burning flame, became a silent ember, and in its place, a dangerous curiosity began to settle in. With each of Caleb's gestures, Vicky was confronted with the image she had built. Of him, he wasn't just a cold, pragmatic man. He was a man who, somewhere deep down, had a heart. He listened to her, respected her, and above all, he was present. This new version of Caleb intrigued her and made her question whether her promise, never to get romantically involved, was really a protection or a prison. Every day, the walls she had built around herself to protect her from the pain of love began to crumble. She caught him watching her several times, his hand on her belly, a shy smile on his face. It was a smile she had never seen on him, a smile that made her question everything she believed. The attraction to him, once a taboo, became a reality she could no longer ignore. It was a love born from a mistake, a flower growing in the midst of chaos. The conflict with Ryan intensified. He, who was once the pillar of her life, was becoming an obstacle. Each time he tried to get close, she pushed him away. He invited her to dinner, to go to the movies, but she always found an excuse. I'm tired. I need to finish the restoration. I'm with Caleb. His name, which had once been an insult, became an excuse, a justification for her distance. Her promise that love was the only thing that would lead her astray was becoming a prophecy. She was straying from her path, but not because of love, but because of a mistake, a destiny she couldn't avoid. Ryan, in turn, tried to fight. He took her to places they used to frequent. He talked about their future together. He tried to make her remember who they were, but it was useless. With each attempt, she moved further away, and the pain in his eyes was the only sign that he was fighting. The tension between Caleb and Ryan became palpable. They confronted each other, not with words, but with glances, with silences. Ryan, in an act of desperation, tried to ask for Vicky's hand in marriage. He took the ring out of his pocket and knelt down, but Vicky stopped him. "I can't, Ryan," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I can't marry you while I'm pregnant with another man." The rejection broke Ryan's heart, and it made him realize that he was losing the battle. Caleb, in turn, just watched, a victorious smile on his face. Caleb's cynicism, his coldness, his arrogance, all came back. He wasn't the man who had helped her at the clinic. He was the man who wanted to demolish her grandmother's building. The scene was an emotional climax, a confrontation between Ryan's stability and Caleb's chaos. And Vicky found herself torn between the two, love and destiny. The revelation of the secret made her realize that her promise was not about art, but about pain. Her aversion to Caleb wasn't about his ambition, but about her father. Caleb became, in her mind, the personification of the man who abandoned her, the man who broke the promise of love. But the pregnancy made her confront her pain and made her see that Caleb was not her father. He was the father of her child, the man who was present, the man who helped her. The truth about her family's past freed her from her promise and made her realize that she couldn't live in fear. She found herself in the middle of a storm, and the only thing keeping her standing was love. Love for her child, and the love she didn't want to admit for Caleb. Her grandmother's promise, which had once been a wall, became a prison. The decision was difficult, but necessary. Vicky, with a broken heart, broke up with Ryan. She did it with tears in her eyes, with the pain of loss, but with the certainty that it was the right thing to do. She couldn't continue with him. She couldn't live a lie. She loved him, but not in the way she thought. She loved him as a friend, a confidant, but not as a partner. The decision to break up with him was her first step toward freedom, her first choice. From then on, her life would no longer be governed by promises, but by choices. Ryan, with a broken heart, let her go. He understood that he wasn't the man she needed. He was the man she wanted, but Caleb was the man she needed. He loved her enough to let her go and to wish her happiness, even if it wasn't with him. The demolition of the old building, which Caleb was working on, became the backdrop. The fight for the building, which was the symbol of Vicky's struggle, became the fight for herself. She wasn't fighting for the building, but for her freedom. Her promise, which had once been a prison, became a liberation. Her aversion to Caleb, which had once been hatred, became love. She realized that life cannot be planned, and that sometimes destiny gives us what we need, not what we want. Forced cohabitation began to transform into a dangerous closeness. Vicky's studio, once a silent sanctuary, was invaded by Caleb's imposing presence. His expensive suits and CEO air contrasted dramatically with Vicky's paint-stained gloves and the smell of turpentine. Instead of bringing checks, he started bringing coffee, pastries, and more surprisingly, comfortable silences. He watched her work on her grandmother's canvas, not with disinterest, but with a growing curiosity. It was as if he were trying to unravel the story of a living work of art. With each gesture, the tension between them mixed with an undeniable attraction, as if two opposing forces were approaching, unable to resist the magnetic field that united them. Dialogue once non-existent began to flow, not about business, but about art, history, and the beauty of the city. Caleb to Vicky's. Surprise revealed that his aversion to old buildings was a facade. He loved architecture, but the pressure from his father, the company's founder, forced him to demolish and build, to think about profit, not legacy. He listened to her talk about her grandmother, about the promise, and for the first time, he saw her not as a problem, but as a woman with a story. He respected her, admired her, and every day, the walls Vicky had built around herself to protect her from the pain of love began to crumble. Her aversion to him mixed with a strange attraction, a dangerous spark she didn't want to admit. The pregnancy progressed, and Vicky's life, once a painting of cold colors and somber tones, began to come alive with vibrant, unexpected brushstrokes. The studio, which had been her sanctuary, became their home. Caleb moved in, and the house, once simple and full of her grandmother's memories, filled with laughter, with life, and with a love they hadn't expected. The smell of paint mixed with freshly brewed coffee, and the sounds of hammers and brushes joined the sounds of conversations and a life beginning. Her grandmother's canvas, which had once represented her promise, became the symbol of her liberation. Vicky, with her hands on her belly, restored it with love, the painting coming to life just like her life. The baby became the bridge between them, and the love born from a mistake became the most beautiful work of art. Her grandmother's promise to honor her legacy became the legacy of her life, her love, and her child. The pregnancy was a time of healing and forgiveness. Caleb, who had once been a pragmatic and cynical man, became a passionate and dedicated one. He was no longer the man who wanted to demolish Vicky's past, but the man who wanted to build a future with her. He took her to ultrasounds. He helped her choose the colors for the baby's room. He listened to her, and above all, he loved her. Vicky, in turn, forgave herself. She forgave her mother for abandoning her. She forgave her father for hurting her. And most importantly, she forgave herself for living in fear. The pregnancy made her confront her pain and made her realize that love isn't a promise, but a choice, a decision to fight, to open herself up to the unexpected. Her grandmother's promise to honor her legacy became the promise to honor herself, to honor love, to honor life. Ryan's ring, which had once been a symbol of hope, became a symbol of forgiveness. Ryan, with a broken heart, became a friend. He visited them, he helped them, he loved them. He became the pillar of support, the friend Vicky needed, and the godfather the baby needed. His pain transformed into love, and his hope transformed into a new journey, to find his own happiness, to build his own life. The love triangle, which had once been a conflict, became a family of love, forgiveness, and support. Ryan's ring, which had once been a weight, became a memory, a reminder that love isn't always what we want, but what we need, and that life, no matter how hard we try, cannot be planned. The demolition of the old building which Caleb was working on became the stage for their resolution. Caleb, in an act of love, gave up the project. He didn't do it out of obligation, but out of love. He understood that Vicky's legacy, the city's history, was more important than any business deal. And instead of demolishing the building, they restored it together, transforming it into an art. Center, a place where history and the future united, where memory and greed were reconciled. The building, once a symbol of destruction, became a symbol of love, forgiveness, and a new life. The work became the bond that united them, proof that love can bring together what life has separated. The project, which was once the cause of their conflict, became proof that love can overcome hatred and that life, no matter how hard we try, cannot be planned. The birth of their baby, a girl, was the final point of their journey. She was the materialization of their love, proof that destiny can be kind, even when it's cruel. She was the bridge between them, proof that love can be born from a mistake, and that a family can be built on the ties of love, not just blood. The name they chose for the girl together was a tribute to Vicky's grandmother and a tribute to their new legacy. The girl was the promise of a new life, a new beginning, a new love. She was the legacy of a promise and proof that destiny can be the most beautiful work of art. Vicky and Caleb's love story, once a tragedy, became a romantic comedy. The story ends with the family, Caleb, Vicky, and their daughter, sitting in the studio. Her grandmother's canvas, which was in perfect condition, was hanging on the wall, its legacy becoming the legacy of their daughter. The girl, a copy of Caleb with Vicky's eyes, was in her lap, her little hand holding Caleb's finger. Life, which was once a serene river, became a turbulent. But they were in it together, and their love was the boat that guided them. Life, which was once a promise, became a choice, and their choice was to love each other. The ending, bittersweet and happy, was proof that destiny can be the most beautiful of surprises.